the warble. It's a different kind of sound than many of us are used to. Native American flutes are primarily used these days for new age style, mellow playing, long tone playing. This is a very different kind of a style. That note that you hear when I have all holes closed, my bottom note, is called a warble. And it is characteristic of the old flutes, the flutes that were particularly made before the 1990s, before the 1980s. Great Plains of North America, right? The Plains Indians were making this style of flute that had this characteristic sound on the bottom note. And you might love it, you might not love it, but you should be familiar with it. The warble is all holes closed, and what I'm doing is I'm breathing into the flute, and I'm not using any special technique or vibrato. The flute is doing it on its own with a steady long tone breath. Demonstrate. And I'll bring it from a very soft breath up. That pulsating sound is not vibrato. You can simulate it with vibrato. We'll show it later on a flute that doesn't warble, but this flute will produce that sound with a steady breath pressure, and it's kind of an oscillation between the low tone and overblowing without jumping into the overblown, the second register, right? So it's living in this space between the first and the second register and getting this oscillating pattern. Many of the old flute makers, if they produced a flute that did not do that, they did not warble, it'd be kindling. They'd move on and they'd start over and build a new flute. So that's the classic sound, and this is a flute by O.W. Jones, a classic traditional flute maker. I'll show it on another flute. This is a Richard Payne, a two-bot original, and its style, let me show you the difference. Okay, on the O.W. Jones flute, there was a nest area that is, it's actually glued on, and it's a cedar nest, and this has a movable brass nest, and that was the style that Doc Payne made his instruments. And you'll notice something about both these flutes that enable it to warble. And in order to warble, you're going to look at the sound mechanism on both these flutes. The sound mechanism is very tall, and it's got these wings on the side, especially the O.W. Jones flute. Look at that. And you'll see wings on the sides of the front face of the block of the bird, and they surround the sound hole, and it's very tall, called a chimney. And that's a characteristic construction style that encourages the warble. Right? So that's what to look for. If you want a flute that's a warbling flute, here's a Doc Payne flute. And this is tuned to a different scale. This is a diatonic flute. It is not tuned to minor pentatonic. It is tuned to the major scale. So I'm just going to play the scale up and down, emphasizing the warble. Here we go. There it is. That's the warble. And we'll move to a more modern flute. This is our reference flute for Flute Haven. It's made by John Norris. It's a modern flute, and it has a beautiful sound that you would associate with contemporary Native American flute playing. And it is very well behaved on the bottom note. That pulsating you heard at the end when I held that last note, that was my vibrato. Straight sound on this is no vibrato. Now, if I increase my breath pressure on the bottom note on this modern flute, what's going to happen? It's going to start to warble because I have the bird a little bit forward. If I move the bird back to its normal position, let's see what happens. Moved it back a scooch, very small amount. It will behave normally in the sense that it will break into the second register. One more time. I'm just increasing my steady breath pressure. However, notice it has a tall chimney and side wings. If I slide the bird just a scooch back forward, there's the warble. Okay, so that's how you can get it on a modern flute. Slide the block just a little bit forward. Here's a flute that doesn't warble. Here's a flute, you'll notice it does not have the side wings. It wasn't designed to warble. Modern flute. If I increase my breath pressure, it's going to jump into the second octave. How do I get it to warble? I really can't. However, I can simulate a warble. If you want to get that style, and this is a great exercise for breath control and for dealing with a flute that wants to jump into the second register, hold the flute on its bottom note and use vibrato to simulate warble. And really push it hard, and see if you can keep control of it. That's the warble. What's it good for? Some people like it, some people don't like it, but it's really great to demonstrate the old style of playing. It's really great to broaden your palette of techniques that you can use. Because the broader our palette is, the more techniques we have in our toolbox, the more emotions we can pull out, the more situations that we can handle. You can use it to demonstrate what the old sound sounded like, and you can use it to play, as we'll do in the future. One of our future flute casts is on playing powerful solos. So hope you enjoyed that, and have fun with it.